Okay, hello. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a nice lunch and that you're ready for our final keynote speaker. My name is Tim Rudbøg. I'm an associate professor in the study of religions at the Humanities faculty and also a co-president of the Society of Fellows. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce to you our final keynote speaker, Ijeoma Uchegbu. And so Uchegbu is the immediate past UCL Provost Envoy for race equality, a role in which she led on race equality work at University College London. She's a commanding speaker and a strong voice for diversity and inclusivity at university and society. In the 2025 New Year honors, Ijeoma was made a Dame for her contributions to the chemical sciences and to diversity and inclusion. She's professor of pharmaceutical nanoscience at University College London and the president of Wolfson College at the University of Cambridge. Ijeoma will be talking about bringing equality, diversity, and inclusion forward through research leadership. So we very much look forward to this, and the word is yours.
Thank you. Thanks ever so much, and I really appreciate being invited to talk today. It's a huge pleasure and a huge honor. And I think it's important for me to say, just in case I become incredibly boring and you all fall asleep, there is just one message to take away from today. And that is that as you lead your research groups or lead your research teams, I think it's important to make sure that all talents are utilized, irrespective of their personal characteristics. And by that I mean not having a gender bias or not having any ethnicity bias. That's the only thing to take away from all I'm saying today. And I'm off to a good start because, as you can see, the microphone perfectly matches my skin. Perfect match. So I'm off to a really excellent start here. So the first thing I'm going to do, of course, is introduce myself because, believe it or not, my EDI work is a side hustle. I do have another hustle in research. So I'll introduce that, so that's the sort of framing. And it allows me to get away if I've made mistakes because you can see what I spend most of my time doing. So just to introduce, I work in pharmaceutical research and I'm trying to solve problems that we have when we make medicines. And the problems are twofold. One very large problem is that it's quite difficult to develop new medicines. It costs a lot of money and it takes a lot of time. And we have a lot of failures with the compounds that we develop as medicines. So these compounds fail and fail and fail again. And they fail so much that only 1 in 5,000 compounds that we actually look at in the round actually makes it from concept to the market. And all the other compounds fall by the wayside because we don't have a very good way of determining which of these molecules are going to be most effective. So, and one of the reasons why they fail is that not enough drug goes to the disease tissue and more of it goes to tissue that is healthy. So you don't have good efficacy and you have side effects. So it's very expensive and a lot of them fail in phase 2 clinical trials. The other problem that we try to solve is that most people on chronic medication do not take their medication. Half of them just don't take their medication. So some of us in the room that are on chronic medication, we miss a dose or we decide we don't want to take it because we don't like the side effects. So if we can get more drug going to the disease tissue and less of it going to healthy tissue, then we would have better drugs that people want to take. So we solve this problem by using nanoparticles. We put drugs into these nanoparticles, and we use them to shuttle the drug molecules towards the diseased tissue. That's what I've done for 3 decades in my lab. And for about 25 years, my research was funded unbroken by the research councils of the UK, which we call the United Kingdom Research and Innovation. So for 3 decades, and this is what we've done. And then we've moved away to have a private company trying to take these medicines to patients. We have a key focus of delivering very large molecules that don't get to the brain. And we have another focus of making sure we can deliver drugs to the back of the eye, the retina. So those are our 2 bits of innovation that we've been able to do. We can deliver genes to the brain. We have a very big program on that. And we can deliver drugs from eye drops to the back of the eye. If you present today to your doctor with a retinal disease, you'll have an injection into your eyeball while you are awake. People do this, so we want to move away from that. So we have some technology, we have a company, we've won awards. Last year we won the King's Award for Enterprise in the Innovation category, and 1 person went to Windsor Castle to collect the award, and sadly that wasn't me, and I'm still angry about that, but that is life, and we've won other awards as well. So we work in these areas, we deliver to the brain through the nose, we deliver these eye drops to the back of the eye, and that is the work that I do full time. And we recently did a clinical trial, and I show you the molecule that I designed when I was knee-high to a grasshopper in 1998. And the big news for us is that that molecule finally went into clinical trials, and the clinical trial was successful. We also have an oncology platform looking at a really horrible form of breast cancer, triple-negative breast cancer, where the prognosis is really poor, and we've developed a technology in that area too. And we have a pipeline of drugs. So that's sort of what I do full-time, and now I'll talk to you about what the other work that I've done around diversity and inclusion. So why should we care about diversity and inclusion? Well, one thing to bear in mind is that we have workforce requirements. In the UK, we do have a skills shortage, so we are looking for skilled people to work in the various sectors. We have low productivity, and we need more skills. And as well, someone my age, I'm very interested in recruiting more skilled people so that my pension gets paid. It's quite important to me. So we do need more skilled people in the workforce. And so if we overlook certain individuals, we are not using all our talents. And we have a demographic issue with our low fertility rates. I don't know, what's the fertility rate in Denmark? Anyone know? Sorry? The same as this. So around Europe, we do have problems with fertility rates, much less than the replacement rate of 2.1. So we have to make sure that with this shrinking, very productive part of our demographics, we are able to make sure that more people can join the workforce. And this is also looking at gender bias, and also looking at when it comes to ethnic minorities. Over half the workforce female, half the population female, and about 1 in 5 from an ethnic minority background. So that's the reason why we should care. And those of you running scientific research teams, I'm sure you have international students and international postdocs joining the teams from different countries in the world. So why is it important, against a backdrop of 1 in 5 people coming from an ethnic minority background and over 50% of the population being women, why is it important to have diverse teams? Well, the data is clear that if you have diverse teams, they tend to be smarter. And this is because if you have a homogeneous team, so I always liken this to we're having a discussion. I've got 4 daughters, I've got some grandchildren, we're all around the table and we're having a discussion, and we can be as prejudiced and biased as we want in that particular forum. We can say anything without evidence, within reason. But if you're in a professional setting, you really have to rely on the evidence. And in order not to get into that sort of family situation where dogma rules, if you have different people around the table, you're more likely to look at the evidence, because someone will challenge you if you say something that actually isn't born of evidence. Whereas if I'm sitting around the dinner table and I spout some nonsense, my daughters will roll their eyes. They may challenge me, they may not. But in a professional setting, you'll be challenged. So you really do look at the evidence. And suddenly I'm loud. Okay, so if you have an ethnically diverse jury, they tend to rely on the facts, and which is what's of interest to all of you. If they're pricing stocks and shares and assets, they tend to price these more accurately. And for all of us that have pensions, we want the assets underpinning those pensions to be priced accurately, so we don't get to the situation we had in 2008. And also, if you have diverse leadership teams in companies, you have more innovative products. So this is just evidence from the literature for the case for diversity. And McKinsey used to do this regular sort of looking at what happens for listed companies from around the world when they had diverse leadership teams. And what they found was that if women were in line management roles, the companies tended to be at the upper quartile for profitability. And if they had ethnically diverse leadership teams, they also tended to be in the upper quartile for for profitability. And as we know, diversity is also under attack. Okay, so diversity is under attack, science is under attack, intellectual thought generally is under attack. So if we can provide the evidence for benefit, it's good for everyone. So McKinsey has done this over a number of different reports. And you can see what they are saying is that when you look at all the different reports that they've found, they found that the likelihood of being in the upper quartile actually tends to grow if you have women over all the different years from 2015 to 2023. So 15% more likely to be in the upper quartile for profitability, up to 39% more likely. So having diverse teams. Nowadays, if I go to a website and I look at the leadership team and it's full of the same type of people, it actually looks old-fashioned to me. It looks as if something's missing. Yeah? If there are no women, there are no ethnic minorities, to me it looks a bit strange. And the same with ethnic diversity. Again, you're more likely to be in the upper quartile. So think about it. If you have an international company working in many different markets, you need to know your customers. And the way to know your customers is to make sure that you have that diversity at the top, so that then you're not releasing products which don't work in certain markets. And then for those of us that are academics, and we all say, we don't care about citations. The H index, forget about that. That means nothing. But secretly, we check it, then we check our competitors, then we either weep or we're happy. Yeah? So we all know that actually we do care. And what they found is that if you had an ethnically diverse author group, you were more likely to have more citations. And again, it's that if you're looking at real-world global problems, it stands to reason that you should be working across the piece with the authors. So if you want to work on provincial problems, so I don't know, what kind of beer is more important in Southampton, and that's okay. You work with the people in Southampton, you get a good result. But if you want to understand drinking habits and liver cirrhosis across the world for your new drug idea, you probably need to work with people across different parts of the globe. and across different disciplines. So interdisciplinary research is the only way to solve the pressing problems of climate change, inequality, food security, and other things like our demographic time bomb. So you can see that these are the diversity dividends. And I'll rush forward now a little bit. I've sort of given some benefits. But there's also a negative. If you live in a country which has really bad income inequality, just talking about a friend here, you find that that country has more societal ills. And these are societal problems. And you can see the kind of problems that we're talking about. More incarceration, more teenage pregnancy, and all the things that we don't want to happen around us. Luckily, let me find us. We're in a good place here. Yeah? A more equal society. So you can see that all these inequalities are actually not good for any of us. Even if you feel, well, I'm a middle-class woman living in Cambridge, hey, I'm not going to get obesity or incarceration or homicide. But nevertheless, if it's happening in a place near you, it's incredibly unpleasant. But we know disparities exist, and I'm going to now dive into the UK. And one of the disparities we have in the UK, we have an ethnic pay gap. We have an ethnic pay gap because certain ethnic minorities are segregated in low-paying jobs. So again, you have this income inequality, this really awful inequality. And you can see British people of Pakistani, Bangladeshi origin, the ethnic pay gap is 20%. So it's really, when you consider the median of two groups, white employees and employees from these ethnic minorities, you can see that actually certain people are segregated to the lower sort of grades. And one thing you have to bear in mind is that when politicians actually, all they want to do is make sure that certain groups can earn more money. There's a lovely thing that Bernie Sanders said. You want to make sure certain groups can earn more money. The best way to do that is not to say we want certain groups to earn more money. It's just to say, actually, let's divide people. Let's make sure that this group hates this other group. Because then while they're fighting, we can be counting our money. So the other problem we have is female participation. And we have a female gender pay gap, which hasn't moved very much, even though we have gender pay gap reporting. Do we have gender pay gap reporting in Denmark? Okay, so mandatory above 250 head count must be reported. And in the beginning, there was a dive down, but now it's sort of stubbornly sticking out between 13 and 14%. And we also, for a very established democracy, have quite low levels of, this is the gender pay gap, but quite low levels of female participation in politics. So it's quite, I always say that it's interesting, we have I don't know if it's gone now, but we used to have a tax on female sanitary wear, feminine hygiene products. We used to have a tax. And I can tell you that if women were in the room when they were talking about that tax, we wouldn't have had a tax. Yeah? So we need to have the participation in these areas. So let me move to education and race. And this is a slide that always causes me a lot of pain. And it shows the disparities that happen in our country. So we are looking at 3 levels of certification. Certification at the end of primary school, where now we're looking at how many children actually can meet the standard in mathematics, in reading, and in science. How many children? And what you find is that you have really very good performance. These are all British students, if they're of Chinese origin, if they're of Indian origin, and black and white pupils, kind of the same. There's another conversation around why a third of children leaving primary school are not meeting the standard, which I think is the bigger story here. But for the purposes of today, what we're focusing on is just the level of each set of British students. By the time they do their A-levels, you have massive underachievement with black pupils compared to white pupils. So in those years, about 7 years, the black pupils have fallen behind. I would wager that value has not been added to those pupils at all. Yeah? In fact, they've lost value in the education system. And you can see that the pupils of Chinese origin and of Indian origin continue to outperform when it comes to, these are the pupils that will get 3 A's at A-level, and that's what you need to go to a research-intensive university. You need 3 A's at A-level if you're going to go to a research-intensive university at UCL, Cambridge. In fact, in UCL, we used to turn away 4 A stars at A-level. Normally, this is the time when I ask the room, how many people have got 4 A stars at A-level? And normally, nobody puts up their hand, or one person puts up their hand, and they're lying. So, just to say. But in this case, then we move to degrees. And one thing you can see here is that if you just look at numbers, I think these numbers are from 2029. You can see now that the Chinese students, the lead they had has disappeared. They've spent 3 years in university, and suddenly they're unlikely to get a good degree when compared to white students. They had this commanding lead from Key Stage 1. It's gone. I would also argue that the value has not been added to those students in the education system. Indian students have also fallen behind, and black students have fallen even further behind. So something's happening that's not quite right. We can focus on the fact that black students started falling behind at A-level, but I think the story here is how come students of Chinese origin and Indian origin that have had this lead, suddenly it's gone in 3 years, 36 months, wiped out. Anyway, I did present this at the House of Commons, and they just went, nah. They didn't really care. But it was presented to people that could make a difference. So we had an award gap at UCL of about 7% at the time. The sector award gap is a lot less now. Once COVID came along, the award gap was wiped out. Really wiped out in the exams that they did in 2020. Completely wiped out. So that gave us an insight into things that we could do with the assessment process in order to level the playing field. And people wonder, well, why is there a award gap? Is it that they come from poor families, they're in jobs, or maybe they come from families that don't have the tradition of going to university, they're first generation? Is it that they're commuting? None of this works. None of this actually explains the data. And we consider the data to be unexplained. That's what we say. But we know that these racial disparities exist. It continues to go forward. If you come out of university without a good job, you're less likely to earn a top wage. So if you look at this is black workers, and you're looking at the pay gap here, and I don't know if you can see this, but the pay gap here for black workers is about 14.3% if they've got A-levels. They go and get a degree, the pay gap is 23%. And I'm just thinking about those conversations with my 4 daughters, where if any of them thought, well, I don't really want to go to university, they were immediately silenced, rugby tackled into a next room and spoken to for many, many hours until they changed their mind. And it worked. All of them went to university. But then when I look, I'm wondering, was I really doing the right thing? So, moving on to UK academia. And again, you see this real disparity. So first of all, the background. You look at this is the makeup of academia. You've got 75% are white, 16% are from ethnic minorities, and 2% are black against the population. So you can see that more or less is reflected. Maybe this could be a bit higher, considering that 4% of the UK population are black. And then you look at the professors, and 82% are white, 10%, so a lot less than the 16%. So again, it's more difficult to rise up if you're an ethnic minority, harder. When I went to, my first job was in Strathclyde, and I became a professor in 5.5 years. I thought that was normal. And so when I was asked to come and get involved in race equality, I thought, what's the problem? I didn't see it. I had a complete false consciousness. I walked into the room actually thinking, for the first meeting when we're talking about race equality, I'm just going to play with my laptop at the back of the room so they'd never invite me again and I won't say a word. And then I saw the numbers and that changed me completely. But you can see that there is a problem. Oops, sorry. Okay, I've killed it completely. I will definitely be needing some help. So sorry. I think I pressed what I shouldn't press. Yeah. Thanks very much, Niels. I've got a huge fat finger. I was just getting onto the main bit. The main bit is main bit is 47% of UK academics are female, but only 0.2% of UK professors are female and black. At one point, just before COVID, there was a big campaign because there were only 45, there are 20,000 professors, I think. Is it 20,000? Sorry, I've got the numbers. I can't remember the numbers. But I know that there were 45 black female professors. And I used to joke that I could have them all in my living room and we could all have a coffee, you know, because there were such small numbers. I think they've gone to about 80 now. So women generally are less likely to be promoted and ethnic minorities less likely to be promoted. So let's look at research. And remember what we said, that we need all people to come together and do research. And this was an interesting one because they looked at, remember I told you that my work has been funded for 25 years? Well, I mean, the statistics were so poor that we don't even have a graph here for principal investigators that are black. I mean, it didn't even register. So this was the UKRI doing their own work, which is very important, self-assessment. And here, I'm just going to give you funding rates here for you to have a look at. The numbers at the top are the number of awards that were made, and you may not see these numbers. But look at the funding or the award rates. And what you can see here is that black PIs are less likely to get an award. Asian PIs are less likely to get an award as well. Okay. But if they're co-Is, then that's fine. So principal investigator, co-investigator, you know the difference. And this was what they wrote in their report. So white applicants had higher award rates, and Asian co-investigators had low award rates. And so this is just more data showing, again, the award rates for the different groups. I mean, the take-home here is that if you're a black budding PI, you're less likely to get an award. I mean, that's the take-home message here. And if you're an ethnic minority PI as well, you're less likely to get an award. And then this is an interesting one, and the same thing happens for women. And what this shows is actually, these are median award rates over a number of years. And actually, if you are a black PI, you try and mitigate you not getting the award by asking for less money, okay? So you tend to, the median is lower for those particular researchers compared to, unfortunately I've got an overlap. But this here is 186,000, this is 381,000. So there is a big difference in the two. These are UKRI figures. So, low award rates, less money, but nevertheless needing to build that research, the body of research, in order to advance everybody's life. And looking at women, and there's some good news for women. So first of all, the award rates for male and female are not that different, which is very good. And when it comes to fellowships, women are more likely to get a fellowship than a man, according to UKRI data, which is, from my perspective, absolutely excellent news. But the thing about it is that women apply for less. So here you've got 805, going to the fellows, you have, looking at the PIs, you've got 805 female PIs and double the number, 1,900 male PIs. So women have to apply for more of these awards. If you're looking after female researchers and they come tentatively into your office and say, I'm thinking of making an application for this, what do you say? You say you go for it. And I've actually cleared my diary to read your application, to give you as much support as possible so that you can win. So that then we have issues that affect women being researched on by people who understand the impact of those issues on their lives. So I'm on the Wellcome board. The Wellcome's £40 billion endowment. We're spending £1.6 billion a year over the next 10 years in order to solve pressing problems. But we also have a problem when it comes to award rates. You can see there's a 6% difference. It's a bit less than some of the government ones. But we've decided to do something about it. We have an EDI lead who's really looking through everything we do to see how we are managing our research budget. We are managing our overseas institutions. A lot of those are headed by people who actually have their roots in the UK and not by people who have their roots in the countries. So all those kind of things are being looked at. And we have specific awards for people from underrepresented groups. And these awards are going really, really well. It's a fabulous scheme. The other thing we're trying to do is we have lots of different things that is being done by the Royal Society of Chemistry. They have this program where they bring people in from underrepresented groups into companies. So they've brought them into our company. This is a group of them visiting our company and getting a demonstration so they can imagine themselves being in the chemical industries and having different careers. And we also have the Royal Society, our premier learned society, having these career development awards. And I was on the panel when these women were coming in, women and men, in order to get these awards. And I can tell you, I mean, of course, I do cry at the Christmas adverts, so I cry at all the movies, and if it's a romantic movie, I also cry. But when they came in and presented themselves, I was filled with emotion because I thought, if not for this award, these brilliant people, one of them who had 4 Nature papers, by the way, these brilliant people would never have thought to apply to the Royal Society. So I was full of emotion when I saw them. And this is also going incredibly well. So I'll just finish off with what we're doing at UCL. This is International Women's Day. You know, you all gather together, you take a picture, but there's still a gender pay gap. But at least you got the picture, you know. So we're doing lots of things. We went to the Race Equality Charter and got a kite mark. The kite mark means that we understand their racial disparities. This is what we're going to do about them, which is good. We did a road show, and this is something I led. I went round to all the heads of faculties, and I said, this is what your data looks like. What are you going to do about it? And we had various pledges made. We had, conversations around race inequality. During COVID, we had a lot of, because if you know, in the UK, we had, in the beginning, a lot of the deaths of health professionals were ethnic minority deaths, people at the coalface. So we had a lot of conversations around that. And I'll tell you about my greatest triumph, and that's the UCL and eugenics inquiry. We also have a statement on race. So with the Dean's Roadshow, we went to people and we said, this is the data, what your data looks like, what are you going to do about it? They had various pledges, and the pledges made a difference. So these were 3 of us that walked into those meetings. In the beginning, those meetings were incredibly hostile, you know, sort of everybody stony-faced and not wanting to meet our eye, and even ethnic minorities looking at the carpet. Why are you causing trouble? What are you doing here? It's going to be terrible for me when you leave after this presentation. But by the time we got to year 3, it was, when you come next year, you'll see what we've done. We're working really hard to make change. And so it worked very well. And we had this kind of data. So this is ethnic minorities being promoted. You can see that grew to level 7 and 8. That's you need a degree to get to level 7. And the more senior grades as well, we saw also more promotions. And we're talking about 12,000 members of staff. So these percentages represent, you know, hundreds of people. And the awarding gap was reduced over time in at least over 4 faculties. They could reduce their awarding gap year after year after year. And of course, COVID came and obliterated it, and we're trying to make sure that those gains remain. I've done it again, haven't I? But you know what? This time I know what to do. I'm an expert. So this was huge, and we were able to show by talking to people in a non-judgmental way that, hang on a minute, did you know about this? Have you seen this data? And most people were shocked. Oh my God, I had no idea. Yeah? And then they did something about it. We also had a Centre for the Study of Race and Racism, so we decided to put our intellectual sort of heft behind the whole thing. Let's understand if there are ways that we could understand where all this kind of stuff had come from. And this Paul Gilroy was the founding director of this, a real rock star in the area. And then this is the bit that sort of really I'm most proud of. We had the names of eugenicists decorating our buildings. They were decorating our buildings up until June 2020. And we had a 15-month inquiry, which I instigated we have to have. So I had the conversation with the provost, and he said, well, you can have your inquiry, but we're not changing the names. And I said, well, why? He said, oh, because they had many, many important contributions. I said, you don't know anything about their contributions because you're a clinician. I don't know anything about their contributions because I'm a pharmacy person. So why don't we get the experts to tell us about their contributions versus their harms? And let's see where the needle falls. So we had this 15-month-long discussion. And I'm pleased to say that within the first 3 meetings, the conversation started to change. And in the end, we got rid of their names. And that is something I am so proud of, because I had 2 daughters that went to UCL. And I'm thinking, I don't know if they had to sit their exams in those rooms, but when I have exams, I'm incredibly stressed. I remember it like it was yesterday, incredibly stressed. So you walk into the exam, you're incredibly stressed, you put your best foot forward, and you do all you can. And as you're walking out, you think, I wonder what this guy did that this room's named after him. Then you go and read that actually this is a person who considered you less than simply because of your race. So you're going in the next day to do your exam. You're feeling really confident, aren't you, after you've read that? So should that have happened to any of my children, I know for sure it will never happen to any of my grandchildren. I'm incredibly proud of that, that we got rid of the names. So this inquiry was led by Ijeoma Uchegbu. She was from the University of Leeds, so away from us, coming in from the outside, led the inquiry, and in the end we got the names removed. And so the last thing I'll talk about is female leadership. This was a good one. So we looked at female leadership of departments, and what we found was that 1 in 7 was led by a woman. And we wondered, well, how are heads of departments chosen? And we realized this is how they're chosen. Dave 1, the head of department, talks to Dave 2, the next head of department, and says, Dave 2, you should be head of department. Everybody wants you to be head of department. So Dave 2 becomes head of department. Once Dave 2's finished his thing, you know what he goes to do? He goes to Dave 3 and says, everybody wants you to be head of department. And thus it continues. So we said, what you need to do is follow our rules, because our rules were clear. You need to advertise, you need to shortlist, you need to interview. And that happened, and within one cycle, we went from 1 in 7 to 1 in 4 women heading departments. And when we presented it, we said, can you tell us why the interview wouldn't work and why this Dave system works better? And nobody could come up with anything that I can remember. So in the end, we had what we wanted by simply exposing what goes on. So it's important to talk about this stuff. It's very important. So talking is important. So I think we need a race equality strategy. We should be awarding schools and universities that get rid of the gap, and we should publish the data on all of these things. And I think now there's a consultation around publishing the ethnic pay gap in the UK. So I'm not plugging my book, but what I want to say is that we should communicate. We should communicate our scholarship. We should communicate our the things about diversity. We should communicate to raise awareness and fill in the space where disinformation comes to sit. This is very important. Science is under attack. Making sure that we have societies where everybody can fulfill their potential is under severe attack. And if we don't talk about these things, we only talk about them in this room, and when we go out, we don't talk about them to our children and our friends and to other audiences like school children or members of the public anywhere we see them, then the disinformation wins. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much. And to quote our keynote, it is incredibly important to talk about this stuff. So we will give you a few minutes to talk to each other, the person sitting next to you, about these important topics. And then in a few minutes we will return with a Q&A. And also remember to use the app, Slido. Okay, so hope you had good conversations about these important topics. So now we are ready to take questions. And you want to direct the questions we have down here at the table, yeah?
Okay.
And the mic will come down to you, so please wait for the mic, yeah?
Can you hear me? Yeah.
I can.
Thank you so much for an inspiring talk. My name is Eben, and I work in HR with development and strategy. And just to let you know, UCPH in the spring and May just decided on a strategic framework on this. And connecting to that, we now have deans sponsoring different strategic initiatives, and this is one of them. And so I looked up your organizational chart for UCL, and I noticed, not surprisingly, that you have now not a vice provost, but a pro-provost for equity and inclusion, which I know is a normal structure in the British system. But could you maybe elaborate on what are your thoughts on having a position like that to actually engage in what you are interested in working with? Does it open up new doors or yeah?
Yeah, so one thing to bear in mind is that when we are talking about EDI issues, you often preach to two categories of people. There's one category that feels that, well, if everybody's doing well, we're all doing well. But there is another category who's very fearful, zero-sum game category, who feel that there's only so much around. If I have to cede ground, I'm going to lose out. So then the conversations become more difficult, especially if you encounter that, because often it's not even vocalized. It's just you get resistance. So having one thing that was clear from the role I had, which was the Provost Envoy for Race Equality, is against our race equality charter, which is the kite mark given to us to work on these issues, and then walking in as the Provost Envoy, then I could talk about these things. I could talk about race without making people feel that I was saying they were racist. I could talk about it in an objective fashion, and always it was pitched in a way around it is good for everyone. Yeah? It's not just good for, I didn't need to be promoted. I'd already been promoted to the top of the tree, so I wasn't pleading for myself, but it was good for everyone. And actually I had some criticism around that, because some people said, well, you should focus on the microaggressions and the petty slights and these kind of things. And I thought, well, if you focus on those, you solve a problem for one person, but you don't solve a problem for the organization. So for the organization, you have to say it's good for the organization. I'll give you some of the stories I used to tell to help people. I used to say to them that if you constantly have an awarding gap that is so large, what you will find is that students will look around, because the numbers are published, but you have to dig for them. And they'll think, if I can go and do development economics at King's College, because they don't have an awarding gap. So I said, so all your students will move away from coming to UCL and they'll start going to King's College. And then one day, someone will ask you, how come you've only got 3 students registered on this course? I think we need to close this course for the good of everyone. And I think you need to have your P45. The P45 is the information you're given as you leave the job. It shows how much tax you've paid, but really you're sacked. So I used to say to people, if you don't embrace these ideas, you will end up having to pay with your own wages. And that kind of got people excited. So having a senior person able to go in and talk about these issues is so important. Having someone who owns the agenda. Because of course it's a distributed agenda, but someone has to be held to account. You cannot hold a whole organization to account. You could hold one person to account. And this person will get bonus payments. So if the numbers move in the right direction, it's good for them personally, but it's also good for the organization. I hope I answered your question. Sorry, I tend to be long-winded.
Maybe we should take one on the board here.
Yeah, so the conversations are always difficult. But the way to, I still believe that the way to actually have that conversation is to present the business case. Always present the business case. So we can start off by saying, I know this excellent researcher who was never made a professor, and she's now disillusioned, and she's about to quit, and blah, blah, blah. You can say things like that. Or I know there's a lot of harassment going on in this particular area. So we can also talk about things like that. But I think if you're trying to make sure that, the person sitting in the audience, this zero-sum person, if you're trying to make sure that person's carried along, then talking about it from the business case is the best way to make sure that that person's carried along. That it's very good for our university if we can attract talent from all over the world. If we can attract talent from all over the world, because people look at our staff profile and they can see people like them in senior positions, so they want to work at UCL, we will have the best choice of people. And that's important. If you have good people, you have a good organization, and everybody wins, and you're high up in the league tables, and all the things we don't really care about, but we really care about, are there, so you can talk about them and say, yes, I'm in the top 10 university, I'm in Cambridge, the best university in the UK, blah, blah, blah. It's only like that because it attracts people from all over the world. And that's something to bear in mind. So the conversations are easier if it's about the business case. The conversations are harder if it's about things which are done behind closed doors, which are affecting 3, 4, 5 individuals. Those conversations are harder. Yeah, so Should I take that one?
Yeah, please.
I think that the way that we can all contribute is in the way I talked in the talk, and that is thinking about yourself as leaders and thinking about making sure that you are getting all the talents so that your research area is flourishing. There is absolutely no point having a research group where 2 or 3 people are so marginalized that actually they don't even speak when you have your group meetings because they're so full of resentment at being marginalized. It doesn't help anyone. So if you have your research group, trying to make sure that there are equitable practices within that research group will mean that everybody can contribute. That's in your day-to-day. If you are on an interview panel, making sure that the questions are fair and the discussion later on doesn't veer into, oh, I don't know, these people, the way they are, I don't really like them. I've been on those kind of panels where someone said, I just don't understand his accent, can't understand what he's talking about. I said, but as he was talking, I didn't see you ask him to repeat anything. So I think you did understand. Oh, well, I understood, but the students won't understand. How do you know? You know? So these kind of conversations. I've been in a panel, a grant awarding panel, where we've gone into closed session and someone has started to attack a young female PI who was in the funding range. Well, you know what? You could end up in a situation where you actually lose credibility if you give funding to this person because they're so early in their career and the money they're asking for is too big. And when I saw this kind of stuff coming on, I would immediately kill it. First of all, I would kill it very gently and say something like, well, it's a team. There are other people, co-investigators who are more senior, who can help this younger person with the leadership things. That was how I started. After a few years, I was like, absolutely not relevant. Absolutely not relevant, and actually, in a way, we're not discussing it. So I had to do that in order to make sure that it didn't grow. But I've had that experience for a very prestigious grant award where people are getting £5 million each. £5 million is a lot of money in the UK for scientific research. But I've had this, well, you know, far too young, because it's a female researcher. So in your day-to-day, nip those conversations in the bud. You're not there to make friends. Be rude if you have to. Not relevant.
So we have a few more questions, Linda, here. Yeah.
Sorry,
yeah, okay.
it's just because I've got the mic, so.
Yeah, all right.
Thank you so much, Professor Dame Uchegbu. Hopefully we call you now. It was a really great talk, very inspiring. And I think the last time I had the pleasure of hearing you speak on this topic was in 2018, so before COVID, when those numbers that you put up around black female professors in the UK were 45 and not really much hope of it moving. Now we're at the 80 point. That's a pretty radical change, actually, in 5 years? A little bit over that. What do you think is the 3 top things, perhaps, to be specific, that's really moved the needle and caused that change?
Yeah, so I think that's why I said we have to talk about this stuff. So I think if we talk about it and we air the disparities and we make people understand that these disparities, we don't have to accept them. Actually, they can be changed. What you find then is that when people are applying for promotion, it's in people's minds. Actually, this particular group of people are less likely to be successful. Let me make sure that I check my bias. Let's be honest, we all have biases. There are some programs I like to watch and some I just don't like watching, don't enjoy it. We all have our biases, but they should not move into the workplace. Our executive function should override our biases, and that's cognitively hard. But if you air this kind of stuff out in the open, you talk about your science, you talk about diversity, you talk about your scholarship, then the cognitive load on others becomes less. So the fact that it was publicized so openly had a big factor, because the thing about publicizing it is that then I'm sitting in my office and thinking, I never thought about myself being a professor, but actually now I'm going to apply because it's possible that I will be encouraged, yeah, and I will have a good outcome. So that it's not about three things. That airing of it is very important. I also sit on the Academy of Medical Sciences Council and on one of the sections to select fellows. So every year we select fellows, and we're only allowed 6, and we have 60 people applying. It's incredibly competitive. But when we get to the last conversations, where now we're talking about the last 12 or 15 that have scored high, I have to listen carefully. I have to listen to the criticism coming about candidate A, that's a woman, or candidate B, that's an ethnic minority. The criticism that didn't come for candidate C. I have to listen very carefully, and I have to say, well, when we were talking about candidate C, this wasn't relevant. So I don't think it's relevant when we're talking about candidate A. And I pride myself, I'm watching that list of 6, and I'm actually overjoyed if we have 1 woman and 1 ethnic minority out of the 6. For me, it's a hallelujah moment. It shows you how difficult it is for certain people to break through.
And really recognize a lot of the things that you say, and I have 2 questions. One is, I think our definition of sort of diversity at KU is fairly narrow, and it doesn't encompass all of the things that you said. And I think there's something for us to work on there. I really think that our definition is extremely narrow. The second is, and I had this chat with another colleague last week, you don't want to be the only person in the room talking about the same thing at every single meeting. How do you create allies?
Oh, fabulous. So the very first part, is narrow a euphemism for it's all about gender? Oh, yeah. I understand the language. So, if you think about racism in the UK, and you think about the 70s and the 80s, a lot of the people leading on the anti-racism were actually white people, because black and brown people were just too scared. They didn't want to go out and get beaten up by the National Front. So a lot of the people leading were actually white people. And allies are easier to come by than you think. So for example, the Wellcome Trust, our chair of the board is Julia Gillard, former Prime Minister of Australia. And Julia Gillard really leads with this stuff when we're talking about funding for low and middle income countries, making sure that we are an anti-racist organization that is welcome. So it's a lot easier to get allies than you think. And one way to do this, with the Race Equality Charter, we were able to get a group of people to talk about racism and its impacts. Now, if the provost, like I told you, when I first went for this meeting, I'm a black woman. I was like, what's the biggie? Yeah? I'm all right, Jack, was the way I was thinking. But then I got into the room and I saw the numbers. Then I went up to the provost and I said, I need a role. I need a role on this, because I didn't kind of tell him I'm pretty pissed off. But I just said, I need a role on this, I need to do something. So I would count him as an ally. It took him about a year to hum and ha, make up his mind. Then he gave me the role, the title. Then I said, and I need paying. It took him another year to and ah, and then he gave me a tiny supplement on my income for me to do this work. But I would regard him as an ally. And when we went round talking to the deans, we were surprised that some of them, they couldn't wait to tell us their bona fides. It wasn't about all my best friends are black or all my best friends are Asian. It was, look at what I'm doing to help so-and-so student. So they're easier to come by. Simply ask, if you want to do something, I would like to do something around this issue, are you willing to get involved? You will know these allies, actually, from their pronouncements. So simply ask.
Do we have a final question or comment here?
Is it on? Yes, you can hear me, yeah. Thank you, that was really interesting. A few moments ago you spoke about a young female an applicant for a research grant, and what you alluded to was a sort of form of age discrimination, in a sense. I'm quite interested in putting age discrimination on the agenda, as of course you'd expect from somebody of my age. What are your views on the age discrimination, and do you consider it age discrimination policy at Oxford and Cambridge universities, whereby people have to retire at, is it still 67 or have they raised it to 70?
I think it's 69 at Cambridge
69,
now.
yeah. Whereas everywhere else you can go on, as I am doing, well beyond that.
Yeah.
You know.
So my view was that I think when we were, is this a Brexit dividend or something like that? Because I think when we were part of the EU, you couldn't discriminate according to age, and people could go on and on and on. I'm not sure how Cambridge managed to carve out the 67. I don't know whether it was after Brexit that they saw an opening. I'm not really sure about it, to be honest. I do know that there was a vote and they decided to go to 69, and we've got a lot of fantastic fellows in Wolfson who now continue to be fellows and share their wisdom with our students. And academia is, in a way, benefits from having, you know, people who have a lot of experience. But I think the problem Cambridge and Oxford were trying to solve is the pipeline one, trying to make sure that other people could come through and also have careers. I think that yes, eventually, but I guess that was probably the motivation for it. So, you know, as I'm an older woman, yeah, I'd like to go on and on forever, you know, and just keep doing it till I'm 150. I'd love that, if at all possible. But I can understand why they felt that this would work for them to bring in new people.
Thank you so much. And now I will give the word to Niels. So Niels will sum up today's event.
I'm not at all possible to sum up such a rich day with so much input, which is why we want to keep this open. And you've seen the QR codes and the hashtags, and you have access still. However, I will take these last 15 minutes to take a few steps back and recap for you what the ambition was. How we set out this, what the purpose in our many tracks, but this research leadership focus was actually from the very beginning. Now, we came in as the inaugural co-chairs last year, and this was a priority. And we sat down with a track group and we boiled out from a long list these 3 priorities: shared and inclusive leadership, pushing high ambitions, deep thinking creativity, as they present themselves in dilemmas, while being held accountable, while being efficient, while keeping a sustainable work-life balance, while delivering fast and high quality. Now, these obviously aren't specific to UCPH, absolutely not. So we invited 3 brilliant speakers, and we're lucky to have them still with us, running out in a few minutes, I suppose, catching flights later today. So we have an opportunity to ask final questions, final remarks, and to challenge this perspective going forward. Now, the ambition was somehow, with a forum like this, to go beyond the baseline research leadership training. Most of us have had some, and many would like more, but today we got very strong conceptual framework for thinking about this on a scientific basis, informed by both research and strong reflexive praxis. We saw at ETH a very vast toolbox of stuff that we might be a little envious of from from a Copenhagen perspective. And then our final very important lesson and overall takeaway, that all talent is to be utilized, that good research leadership is also utilizing talent for the good of everyone. I think this, it sounds utilitaristic or it sounds altruistic, but it is really in everyone's best interest. Now, I can continue with my notes, but I want to give you 3 minutes to buzz. Post questions here. Some might be for Linda and Julia and Ijeoma. Some might be for us to ponder on into the future, and some can be voiced as well in the last 10 minutes. And after that, I'll say thanks and goodbye. Yeah? So 3 more minutes. Yes.
Tænk sig, at I 3 skulle op og svare på spørgsmål. Så kører vi mikrofonen. Ja, fordi så skal du sådan ligesom frem og tilbage. Men det tror jeg næsten, at jeg ved ikke, det tror jeg. Ja,
Og selvom det er keynotes,
det er så fint, og så løber jeg bare frem og tilbage.
Yes,
det er
best work. Du har 10 minutter.
Ja, det skal jeg nok.
All right, everyone. I hope you had time to digest this, the program for today and the questions that we're asking. I'd love to hear input. Is there anything that we definitely must know and bring with us as we move forward? Any other feedback for sure?
Thank you. I was thinking, like, what was the most important thing I sort of learned today and what I want to bring with me. I thought it was really refreshing to sort of realize that like leadership, that it's not who you are or what you do or who you push out the door or in the door, but the fact that you can be influenced. You know, you're an influencer. And I like that much better, because I think if we really dig down, this is kind of what we're trying to do every day, not really, you know, tell people what to do. I mean, apart from the fact that, yes, you have some stuff you want to do, but you, even if you're like a, like for example, I'm a section head, so I don't see myself as the one who really should tell people what to do, but, you know, if you can influence people in a good direction, I think that's sort of what probably most of us actually would like to see that as a success, right? So I thought, at least for me, I thought that was really refreshing to see that you can also be a good leader even if you're just nudging people along or letting them think they got the idea of this new thing that's happening at ETH, right? You know, that's good leadership. Yeah.
Thank you. It was so inspiring to hear about the big structural changes made at UCL, so thank you so much for that. I went to UCL as a PhD student, and this was not part of the discussion back then, so thank you so much. And I was thinking about, it was also really thought-provoking to me to think about this making the business case, because it's so tempting to want to talk from ethics. Like, it's completely unacceptable to discriminate, and to actually try and wrestle with your own feelings in this professional world. So it was really inspiring and thought-provoking, thank you. But it brought to mind also, I was thinking, what do people around me do in more like the day-to-day small context that help? And I think one of the things is, you mentioned, it can be really frustrating to be the person who always brings it up. So it was always like, how come the Christmas party committee is never men? How come we're allowed to say these stereotype jokes and no one complains, right? But I was thinking about Sarah Ahmed's work on being a feminist killjoy, and I think there's also what we saw in all the talks today was a kind of real cheerfulness about being a killjoy, and I think that's so inspiring. And we should all remember we can bring up these things in an enthusiastic and even positive way, and people around us, it makes them feel more comfortable to talk to others about it as well. So yeah, thank you all so much.
Ja. Vil du sige noget før?
Yes, that's a completely different thing. I wanted to thank the organizers. I think this was a really excellent format when you invite such excellent speakers and give them a full hour and time for discussion instead of having a whole panel of smaller, shorter talks. I really liked that a lot, and thank to three of you for coming all the way here. I think this is a good format also for future events.
Duly noted, and I can absolutely say that we will share these slides. Perhaps just within the list of distribution. I don't think we should put it up on a public website somewhere, but we will use some of the video and audio material, at least for in-house learning opportunities, depending on how far we can distribute it. Yes. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to answer the middle one, if I can, who at the UCPH leadership has a responsibility for research leadership development. So I'm Vibeke Korsted, I'm the Dean of Faculty of Social Sciences, and I have the responsibility for well-being, community and good leadership at UCPH. The research leadership development is also under the best place for the best ideas, but it's something we're talking a lot about in terms of how can we move this forward. So thank you very much for today. It's been hugely inspirational, all the talks, and I will definitely be bringing this back. And if anyone has very good ideas, they're always welcome to reach out or write. But thank you very much to the three speakers as well, and for all of you who have made today happen. Thank you.
This has been such a good day, and I have to say it's been incredibly inspiring to have three very powerful women's voices. I'm just so not used to that at our university. Or at my department, and I think we went through like what's it called when you have your department has to have this thingy every 6 years, and we had two people on the panel who were who were women with strong voices, and I was there as head of research, and I guess this goes back to finding allies. And I remember when we sat in where you had to get the feedback after, and they challenged the men. And I've never sat in a leadership meeting with another woman at my department. And so it was a real eye-opener that you can challenge. And I think this goes back to how could we be agents of change in this as our Society of Fellows. And I think what really is important is that we have to lead by example. So this of calling out, you know, these little snippets of comments that come, and I'm unfortunately not quick-witted enough, so I always miss the opportunity, and then only afterwards, like, hang on, that wasn't okay, but oh shit, I didn't say anything. But then sometimes someone else says something, and I'm like, fuck, that was good, I'm going to do that next time. And this goes back to your comment, where now I don't give a fuck. Every time I see something where it's something about women, I call it out, and I don't give a fuck that I'm the only woman there. Like, I feel, now I'm like, it's my duty. It's my duty because of those women I saw at that meeting like 3 years ago, and this has been so inspirational. And so I really think that we should not be so worried, but it requires training. Like, it requires someone else in the room who does it, and you think, wow, that's possible. And so I just want to say, this has just been such an excellent day. Thank you. Sorry I said fuck a couple of times. Sorry about that. Maria said it's when you're in perimenopause, you no longer give a fuck.
Any final thoughts, remarks? It's been, for me personally, a huge indulgence of getting to invite brilliant speakers from outside, getting to tap into, well, we were about 100 when we started the day, of brilliant and engaged colleagues at University of Copenhagen and beyond, and just pooling all this knowledge and digesting it. I look forward to that in the weeks to come. I have with my small team a discussion about when to be abstract and when to be practical and specific. And if you can't help yourself, you're allowed to be abstract. Otherwise, seek the concrete, seek the specific, be detailed, know what you're talking about. And I can't help myself but to cite something Julia said at some point, that we need and seek a consensus and shared language and idea of what good leadership is, what good research leadership is. And that might be a nice ambition to carry forward, to try to fill in all the tangible stuff, all the concrete notions that we had here, all the fucks and I don't give a damn anymore, and pool that and see what comes out over the next few weeks, months, years. Yeah. That's it from me. Thank you very much.